Um, let's start. Hello, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear distinguished participants and guests. My name is Andreas Bielig from the German Economy Research Department of the Warsaw School of Economics. I have the pleasure to cordially welcome you here at our annual conference. The conference is organized under the title New Challenges for the Social Market Economies in Poland and Germany between Market-Oriented and Digital Transformation. Our conference is organized in cooperation with the Konrad Adenauer Foundation in Poland. So we would like also to thank the foundation and all involved persons in the organization for their valuable support to realize our event. In our panel today, we meet to present new insights from research, practice and policy about major challenges deriving from the digital transformation of our society. It was in 1989 when the internet pioneer Tim Berners-Lee developed the foundations of our today's internet application of the World Wide Web. In the following, a fast development of new information-driven technologies, applications and markets culminated, which shaped our societies in many ways. To discuss some major aspects of digital transformation, we arranged today's discussion with outstanding experts from policy, science and practice. We welcome Mr. Thomas Jarzombek from the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy in Berlin. Hello, Mr. Jarzombek.
Hello.
Mr. Jarzombek is since 2019 the Commissioner for the Digital Industry and Startups of the Ministry and Federal Government. The second panelist is Professor Dietmar Harhoff, the Director of the Max Planck Institute for Innovation and Competition in Munich. Hello, Professor Harhoff.
Hello, everybody.
He is an outstanding expert in innovation issues and in intellectual property. The third panelist is Dr. Vera Demary from the German Economic Institute in Cologne. Hello, Dr. Demary. Hello.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, super. Tone is well. She is the head of the research unit for digitalization, structural change and competition and research about digitalization and innovation processes. The presentation of the discussion today has Mr. Marcin Antosiewicz, a journalist with focus on digitalization and academic teacher at the Vistula University in Warsaw. Hello, Mr. Antosiewicz.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello.
Before the discussion, we start with two short keynotes. The first of Mr. Thomas Jarzombek, and then the keynote of Professor Dietmar Harhoff. But before, I would like, of course, to invite our officials from Warsaw School of Economics and Konrad Adenauer Foundation to address some words of welcome to our guests and participants of the discussion. First, I give the floor to the Dean of the Collegium of World Economy at the Warsaw School of Economics, Professor Mariusz Prochniak. After this, the director of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation in Poland, Mr. David Grzegorz, will take also the opportunity to welcome you. So first, please, Professor Prochniak, I give you the floor.
Professor Bielig, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure for me to welcome you at this conference. The conference refers to the very important topics which are worth analyzing and examining in scientific research. Poland and Germany are neighbor countries with huge economic and social links. According to some optimistic projections, Poland should catch up with Germany in the coming decades. So let's hope that these optimistic projections will satisfy in the near future. So I wish you good conference, good debate, fruitful comments, and all the best. Thank you very much.
Yeah, also from my side, hello everybody, dear Professor Bielig, dear Professor Prochniak, honorable speakers, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you on behalf of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. I'm heading our office in Warsaw, and it's a pleasure to open this conference. The Konrad Adenauer Foundation is working intensively on the subject of digitization, and I would like to refer as an example to our studies on the subject of artificial intelligence. It is important that we deal intensively with the topic of digitization. We all feel that Corona is an accelerator of this technical revolution, but of course we also felt beforehand that the platform economy and technical upheavals are having a massive impact on our lives, on our jobs, on the future of work. We have to be honest, Europe does not play a leading role in that issues. In the major economies of the continent, Poland and Germany, have to be much more active here in order to be able to set something against American and Chinese competitors in the future. Against this background, I'm looking forward to our discussions from the speakers, and I wish you fruitful debates. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, David Gregos, the director of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Thank you very much. Now we can start our panel. I have big honor and luck to moderate this panel. And in the name, at the beginning, and the name of all panelists, I want to thank the organizers for this panel, the Warsaw School of Economics and Konrad Adenauer Foundation for organizing this conference. This panel, the name of the panel, the title of the panel is Chances and Risk of Digitalization in Poland and Germany. And we will speak with great experts and with politicians about this transformation, digital transformation in both countries. And we want to make this discussion very interactive. So please don't be afraid to ask your question. Please write and chat us in chat that you want to ask a question, that you want to comment some statement of our panelists. We want to make this panel very interactive. We live in a very interactive time, so please use it as well. That tonight we're waiting for your questions. And as we see since months, digitalization is not important just for the economy, for the companies, but as well for the education and for the medicine, for the healthcare system. Before COVID-19, in many companies, in the institutions, digitalization and automatization were just an experiment, but now it has become a reality, a real life in many companies. We should deal with it, we should develop that, and we should talk about that. And I'm very happy that we have this great panelist, this great guest. First of all, we're going to Berlin to Mr. Tomasz Jarzombek. Mr. Jarzombek, do you hear me?
Perfectly clear.
This is perfect. So when I'm looking at your name, first question, because when I'm looking at your name, it seems, and at your surname especially, it seems very Polish. Do you have any Polish background?
Yeah, somehow it seems, but unfortunately, at this point, I have to say I was born in Düsseldorf and came up in the Rhineland. So in the end, I'm very sorry, I'm not able to speak any Polish words, but nevertheless, I'm very glad to be here today.
Yeah, we're very glad as well. Let's speak digital. This is our topic tonight. As Professor Bielig said, you are the federal government coordinator for digital industry and startups and aerospace policy at the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. But on your Twitter, your description is that your job is you doing rocket science for the federal government. It looks very good. Let's see tonight. Before your keynote speech, I have a question, because every one of us is using right now for work, for education, for just private contacts, Zooms or Microsoft Teams or other communications. So why Zooms or Microsoft Teams wasn't invented in Europe, in Germany?
So this would lead to a true keynote, yeah?
Yes.
I can say some things to that, yeah. But that's indeed, it's a problem, yeah? And maybe if you look at the German economy, the Germans love hardware. And in the end, today we had a lot of dialogues about the automotive industry. And if you look at Tesla, then you find, or at NVIDIA, they take in the core a part of software and build the hardware around. And the core component is software. And the Germans love hardware, and I believe we are pretty good in building machines. But in the end, we have to move there because, as you realize with Zoom and Microsoft Teams and others, today the component which you can earn money with is mostly software and data, and not the hardware anymore. And this is a transition our economy has to go.
But that was the description, not the answer on my question. Why any European and a German company didn't develop this kind of products?
I believe this is the answer because all the engineers you have, they are starting to build hardware and not software, and so they created good machines. Cars, airplanes, whatever, and even not software. And this is the answer to that. To get a global player for all over Europe. It's not only a German problem, but I have a deeper view on that in Germany than maybe in Italy or Spain or wherever. The answer is that we have to focus on software development, on handling with data, and our government here, our ministry, we spend a lot of money, or we are investing, so to say, a lot of money in young companies and young founders to enable them to create data and software companies and to go on the market. And we have one successful player, that's SAP. Unfortunately, they're 48 years old right now. And but we have also some new players. Delivery Hero, they just started to get a member of our DAX index, our share index, and so there are some others. And so I'm in a good mood what the future will bring on that, but with the new companies, not so much with the old ones.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for this honest answer. And now I'm looking forward to hear your keynote speech.
Yeah, so it's all about rocket science. It's what I always try to do. Thanks for mentioning this funny note on that. Professor Bielig, Professor Pochniak, Mr. Gregos, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me here today to this German-Polish Science Conference. And Poland and Germany are strong partners. I don't have to express that. We are at a bilateral level, even though very strongly connected, and also within the European Union. Poland ranks number 6 above UK among Germany's most important trading partners, and Germany is Poland's number 1 trading partner. And with the framework of intergovernmental consultations, we engaged in a close and lively dialogue with the Polish government. In March last year, the first German-Polish Business Forum was held in Berlin under the auspice of Germany's and Poland's economic affairs ministries, and this was a very good event. We launched a variety of projects and cooperation schemes ranging from industrial and competition policy to energy and digital policy. And I was also part of being of a startup exchange with Dansk, and this was very fruitful, I guess, for everybody here. I believe that dialogue is crucial in times of crisis, and after all, we are facing a number of similar challenges. Only by acting together as Europeans we can handle these problems and find good solutions for both of our countries. So let me start by taking a closer look at the economic situation in Germany before I go on to talk about the digital challenges. So, and the elephant in the room obviously is COVID-19, and Poland and Germany alike, the coronavirus pandemic is posing major challenges. We are expecting here a considerable economic downturn after 10 years of continuous growth. For 2020, we have recently adjusted the forecast from -6.3% to -5.8%, and this is something we call a success. However, but this means that the recession is still similar to scope to the global financial crisis. The situation is not as bad as we feared earlier this year, but it's very complicated, especially for several branches like the airline industries and for traveling and the event industry. The sharpest decline coincidence with the lockdown was in April. Since May, there has been a strong economic recovery, both in the services sector, in particular in trade and in industry. And next year's recovery will be modest. We expect the GDP to rise by 4.4%. The spring projection was plus 5.2. The digital economy has also been hit hard by the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Although the digital sector is recovering faster than the overall economy, it will probably take months to overcome the crisis. So what are the support measures that we are doing here in Germany? The German government mounted a quick and comprehensive response to mitigate the economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic. In spring, we adopted a support package worth over €1 trillion that consisted of immediate assistance, loans from the KfW, and an economic stabilization fund, WSF we call it, venture capital and guarantees. In June, a historic stimulus and future package worth €130 billion was adopted to kickstart our economy. However, short-term crisis management is not enough. We need to use the coronavirus crisis to strengthen Germany's and Europe's competitiveness in a lasting way. The digital economy is a key driver of innovation and offers an opportunity for business and society. Whoever wants to be successful in the long term will have to face up to the challenge of digitalization and embark on new digital paths with enthusiasm. The coronavirus pandemic has made this very clear again. Without digital technologies and applications, we would not have come through the lockdown and the restrictions linked to the pandemic nearly as well. And somehow Corona was a booster for the digital acceptance in Germany and also the use of digital tools, for instance, like Teams or Microsoft Teams or Zoom, as you already said. Companies that were well positioned before the crisis now have a head start. Many companies are now investing in digitalization, and therefore the coronavirus pandemic is also an opportunity to catch up on a task that we have not always excelled at in the past, digitalization at full speed and full steam. So I welcome the European Commission's launch of a digital decade and its intention to invest 20% of its next generation EU coronavirus recovery instrument in digitalization, but it has to be done right. So it's time for such a program. As it competes globally for leadership in the digital age, Europe urgently needs to step up not only one gear. At present, the pace is being set by the United States and by Asia. Instead of simply following suit, Europe should now strive to become a global leader. But this is really a huge challenge. The proper deployment of EU funds will play a crucial role. That's what we hope. In the end, the question is, are we doing it right, and are we doing it together with the market? And so this is the core of the German investment strategy, that not the government decides where to invest money into startups. We are always investing together with private partners, and we are always in minority, so that the major risk is at the stake of the private partners, and this brings us a very good market perspective and pretty successful programs by far. And I think this is relevant also for the programs in the European Union, that we do it together with the market, that the major risk is in the market, and that these programs really work and are not the work of, so to say, bureaucrats. So my third topic is the cooperation on Industry 4.0, and Germany and Poland both are industrialized nations. The digitalization of industry, which we refer to as Industrie 4.0 in Germany, is therefore in our mutual interest. Implementing Industry 4.0 is key to strengthening the long-term resilience and competitiveness of our industries. In 2015, Germany set up its platform Industry 4.0, which has helped to make great progress on issues related to standardization, IT security, labor, and digital business models. The platform has also given rise to the Gaia X project, where we would like to see even more interest or more engagement on the Polish side. So we are very open on that. We started here from Germany and our French friends as partners, and it's a true European project. And we really would love to see here more and more Polish engagement on that. After all, Industry 4.0 will be a major area of application for the sovereign digital infrastructure that Europe is striving for. In Poland, too, the establishment of the Future Industry Platform Foundation last year marked an important step towards the implementation of key Industry 4.0 topics. I greatly welcome the cooperation between Germany and Poland on Industry 4.0. The lively dialogue among our countries' experts will help to make successful progress on Industry 4.0, not just at the bilateral level, but at a European level as well, as I just mentioned. Digital policy priorities of the German government. Maintaining and enhancing digital sovereignty is of great strategic importance to Germany and Europe alike. It is, in fact, one of the top priorities we have chosen for our current presidency of the Council of the European Union. Across Poland, Germany, and Europe, we must ensure that society, business, government, and research institutions are able to shape the digital transformation in a self-determined manner. We therefore need to invest in key enabling technologies such as cloud ecosystems, Gaia-X, artificial intelligence, quantum computers, IT security, 5G, 6G, and I believe every year, every month, there are new technologies additionally coming to that. High-performance infrastructures in fixed and mobile networks are a fundamental prerequisite of all digitalization processes, as the cloud services are too. In Germany, we are creating the conditions that allow companies to expand these infrastructures. The early allocation of 5G frequencies in 2019 is a case in point. Likewise, the revision of our Telecommunications Act is to further improve conditions for investors, especially rolling out fiber cables into buildings. Wherever coverage defects continue to exist, we want to promote the rollout of mobile communications and fixed network fiber optics in order to ensure the nationwide availability of a high-performance digital infrastructure. We have decided to raise the funding available for AI up to 2025 from 3 to 5 billion euros. Also, we are enhancing existing funding programs, strengthening our centers of excellence for research on AI and linking them to the regional business sector via application hubs. In forward-looking areas of application, we want to build on excellent research and transfer structures to set up AI ecosystems with a global impact. In this way, we will set the stage for a European AI network and foster the competitiveness of AI made in Europe. In addition, we want to make sure Germany becomes a global leader in quantum technology. We will therefore support the development and production of quantum technologies in Germany. These are to become the new pillar of our industry and is a true game changer, especially for materials and other things that are necessary for the industrial production. The goal of Gaia-X project is to create a safe and trustworthy European framework for a cloud infrastructure for data. Both in Europe and across the world, there is a great level of interest in this project. It has met with a largely positive response, and I can only repeat to invite you to engage here. We now need to promote the roll out at a European level and, as announced, work toward the establishment of the Gaia-X Foundation. Finally, we agree that markets must continue to stand up to legal scrutiny, including in an increasingly digital economy, and that we must counter the abuse of market power. This is what the market economy is all about. We are discussing how this can be best achieved, not only in Germany, but also in the USA, Australia, and throughout Europe. On 9th September of this year, the German government adopted an amendment to modernize national competition law, the Act Against Restraints of Competition Digitalization Act, to cover digital matters. And that's really important. Among other things, this amendment modernizes the supervision of abuse and optimizes the tools of Germany's National Competition Authority, the Bundeskartellamt, to investigate, for example, the conduct of large online platforms and to force the access to data. And it's really important to open up these markets, which are not easy to enter for new startups. All market participants benefit from functioning competition, both startups and large platforms, which have to win over users with innovations in order to stay ahead. At European level, work on the Digital Services Act is in full swing. The aim is to harmonize the digital single market and to establish rules for online platforms. So, my conclusion, many of the issues I have touched on are of great importance on both of our countries, to Germany and to Poland. I think that we can learn a lot from each other, and I appreciate the opportunity to discuss these matters with you today, and I'm very much looking forward to the debate. Thank you.
Vielen Dank nach Berlin, Thomas Jarzombek. And now we're moving from Berlin to Munich. Grüß Gott, Herr Professor Dietmar Harhoff. Hello, good afternoon. Do you hear me well?
I hear you well, and I hope you hear me too.
Yes, we hear you perfectly. Professor Harhoff is the director of Max Planck Institute of Innovation and Competition, as you can see in his background. And the name of the institute, this is exactly what we need right now in the economy in Europe and worldwide, innovation and competition. Before you starting, Mr. Professor, because your areas of interest, it's innovation research, innovation management, entrepreneurship, strategic management, empirical economics, industrial economics, corporate finance, imperial methods, econometrics, statistics, economic policy. So I don't want to lose time and just go to your key note speech, but one question, because everyone is worrying right now of COVID-19, or maybe not everyone. There are some people in the White House, they are not, but many people, let's say, are afraid of COVID-19. But from your point of view, would you say that Corona is a luck?
Well, it is both. I have to tell you, there has been great suffering from Corona, of course, and we should put that at the forefront of what we discuss. People have died, people have been sick, and some are still suffering from long-term consequences. But, and that's my thesis and what I want to present, Corona has also been the greatest accelerator of digitization, at least in this country, and I believe in many other countries as well. Corona was for us a kick in the butt, a kick in the rear that was very, very necessary. So I'd like to separate those two effects of Corona, the good ones and the bad ones, but of course it comes as a passage. Let me phrase it in the following way. If Thomas Jarzombek had to invent a policy instrument that within very few weeks raises the share of people in the home office by 20%, raises the use of contactless payment mechanisms by 20% to Scandinavian levels, which we had never had before, raises the preparedness of patients to see their doctors by virtual means, of course, to avoid the other presumably corona-infected patients in the waiting room, of course, by another 15–20%, or to increase the rate of use of virtual conferencing, saving us a lot of CO2 emissions, a lot of energy, by I don't know what, we don't have good measures on that. Well, you would have to have invented something like a pandemic, okay? We got it without asking for it. We're right now in a state of accelerated digitization in this country, and I can tell you in other countries as well, because of the pandemic. Let me go back a little bit in order to tell you how big this jump really is. And before I do that, let me point out that the technology that we are using here is based on European invention. It is based on data compression that we had in MPEG, invented in Nuremberg at a Fraunhofer Center, but never truly commercialized in Europe, right? And we're using technology that sends synchronized data via the wire, via the internet, which is not synchronous by any means of the imagination. And Skype was the first to really do this, okay? And then they moved at some point to the United States and got acquired by a US company, as we all know. And that's unfortunately the fate of a lot of inventions, of scientific breakthroughs that we have in Europe. Europe is, in terms of scientific breakthroughs, a large power. We're not lagging behind. Yes, others are doing better in some cases, but we're doing relatively well there. We're not doing well in the transfer, in the commercialization. And that's, by the way, why I applaud what Thomas Jarzombek and his team have done for startups in Germany in the pandemic, because the pandemic, of course, not just threatened medium-sized companies, large corporations, and so forth, but also startups, and that required some particular attention. I won't go into that. Let's go back, pre-corona, okay, 2019. Let's take the time period from 2005 to 2019. We see very early that there's something going on in the digital world. Around 2012, Andreas says software is eating the world. It's biting into value shares in all sectors. Germany did not react very quickly to that. And we heard some reasons already, right? Export was going well until last year. And now again, like the biggest business right now for German OEMs in the car business is in China. So that's fine. But that success with mechanical products, with good engineering products, has sort of made us neglect the revolution in digitization that was happening under our noses. And unfortunately, I have to say, we did not switch, not in academia, not in universities, not in the ministries, not in the enterprises. So there was a sort of a communal failure almost to switch. We did not switch, for example, in the services that public administration supplies to our citizens. And that was documented in European rankings where Baltic states and other states were sort of in the lead, and Germany was, well, let's not talk about the ranking that we had there, okay? Things are moving now, and let me give you some of the reasons why things are moving. So digitization in the public sector is moving now also because we implemented a law, the OZG, the Online Zugangsgesetz, that suddenly created a movement and impetus in public administration in our public sector. And of course, this is because of the federal structure, complicated. The municipalities have to do that with the states with the Bund, with the federal level. So there is enough difficulty there. And finally, it kicked in. So we're working on this. And again, Corona is accelerating this. So we're finding new ways of division of labor between municipalities, Länder, and the Bund in this crisis. Let me give you some other effects of Corona. It used to be the case that 13% of the German, of the employees in Germany were at least once or occasionally in home office. By the way, the Polish number is not very different from that. So we may be talking about commonalities in experience here. This is Eurostat data. Scandinavian employees are at 40%, 3 times, okay? And Scandinavia also has a lot of forest workers who cannot be sent into the home office, just as Germany has a lot of metal workers who cannot be sent into the office. So what I'm telling you here is there was a reluctance, a hesitation to try these new forms of digital work, of remote work, mobile work, and so forth. We got the kick in the rear, and suddenly it's working. And I've been doing, together with a team here in Munich, in March already, we did some surveys and we asked people, okay, you're in the home office, are you happy? 80 to 85% of the people, despite of the fact that this was a surprise move, that there wasn't a lot of preparation, said, I'm very happy with my work organization. I'm not saying that home office is perfect or anything like that. We need to work it out. But we got sort of an impetus here that really helped us to see where the frontier is and where we can work. Corona showed the deficits, for example, in our schools, right, in our universities. And at the same time, it showed the potential, for example, in the offices of medical professionals. Because suddenly, in order to, when you are sick in Germany, you send in the Arbeitsunfähigkeitsbescheinigung. I will not translate that into English. I'm very sorry for that. Okay, it's essentially a slip that says this person cannot come to work for medical reasons. And suddenly you could get that by virtual means. And the rate of virtual consultation of medical offices, hop, went up, okay? And not just for that, also for medical treatment, for what we call teleconsil, where you pool many doctors together to talk to one patient. Okay, so I talked about payment means. Okay, by May, we had a rate of use of contact-free and cash-free payment that was close to that in Scandinavia. Scandinavia had also always been the forerunner of the use of this technology. Okay, I do not have the Polish data, unfortunately, but it's an interesting indicator. The use of video conferences already, and what you see now is that the CEOs of large enterprises, for example, Allianz or Siemens, are telling us, look, there are productivity gains in the use of these digital technologies that we were not smart enough to tap into before, but now we are in experimental mode. It's a forced experimental mode, but nonetheless, we're trying things out. And I think it's good that we're doing that. The biggest danger that I see, and I hope we can avoid that, is that the country snaps back into pre-corona patterns after the pandemic. And I hope that with the help of very active and smart politicians and policymakers, and with smart managers, and with unions who also see the advantages of home office for for the people that they represent, that we can avoid that snapping back, because then we would lose the impetus that Corona has given us in this case. And by the way, that also pertains to public administration. I see so many great initiatives right now because our policymakers, our ministries, our public offices switched into crisis management mode. And in crisis management mode, it is suddenly possible in this country, where no law took less than half a year before, to get from the decision in parliament to the law being signed by the president in 2 weeks. So there's acceleration there as well in our processes. We have switched in some cases to project-based organization. Some people, and I'm sure that Thomas Jarzombek has been telling some of his teams to do exactly that, are allowed to break a few rules, to bend a few corners, and to do things quickly. I think we should stick to that if we can after the crisis, because it was good for us. It took bureaucracy down to a level that is much more bearable than what we had before, because that was overdone. And it took a jab at the silo-like structures. Please look at the organization charts of German ministries. They are pieces of art. You have columns, beside silos, and so forth. And that, of course, is historically given. I don't want to, and that's the case in other countries as well. But given digitization and the possibilities that new communication technologies give us, we have to find ways to work project-based in a more agile way. And there are experiments underway, fortunately, to do exactly that. Let me come back to, let me say 3 points on Europe, and they will be much shorter than what I said before.
Okay, thank you.
So I think there's great potential in looking now for joint European projects like Gaia-X. I think it's high time that we think about how we can be autonomous in, for example, the cloud services that we're using. Because we don't want to have the stuff that our kids put into their notebooks that they hopefully have by now via the routers that are in our schools, hopefully at some point. And they end up in some data cloud of companies that do not respect privacy, that do not respect our European data protection rules. So we need some level of autonomy there, but we still, remember the name of my institute, competition. We should not shield off our markets. So what's the right balance there? Okay, we need much more entrepreneurship, agility. And Thomas Jarzombek mentioned Gdansk. I visited the Amber Hub in Gdansk a few years ago. There was a wonderful collaboration between the Berlin centers, the Munich centers. The collaboration extended further into Ukraine because they could do some things very fast in Polish, in German, in English, whatever language you would have. And they could be built into the value chain. So we can Europeanize entrepreneurship, and we should do that. I'm happy that the European Innovation Council is taking steps to do that. So I think there are many, many good things underway. I congratulate all the people who have contributed to that. But we need to make sure that we maintain the dynamics that we have now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then we should be thank that to our Chinese friends a little, but I'm not sure if it's good in that context. Thank you very much. Vielen Dank nach München. And now we're moving to Cologne to Dr. Vera Demary, head of the research unit Digitalization, Structural Change and Competition of the German Economic Institute. Hello, do you hear me well?
I can hear you well. Thank you.
Perfect. So Professor Harhoff is saying that there is not so bad the situation of digitalization in Europe. We should develop, but there is not so bad. What is your point of view? And the conference is about social market economy, and one point of that is a job market, and we see that a lot of companies fired a lot of workers in that crisis. You are an expert on AI, and then I would like to ask you if you think that is it possible that all jobs they were cancelled because of Corona crisis, they will replace by the AI or robots?
Well, that's a lot of questions in one. I'll try to answer all of them. I must say that I really like the positive vibe on digitalization that both Thomas Jarzombek and Professor Harhoff mentioned. I agree with most of it. I agree that the coronavirus had its good in the sense that we're pushing forward and there's been some changes. But I do think we need to be a bit more critical than that. I think that a lot of what was mentioned, especially by Professor Harhoff, is on the surface. I mean, it's pretty easy to send people who sit in an office all day back home and let them use American technologies for conference calls and stuff like that. It's not that easy to digitize production lines, to digitalize factories and whole business models. And I think that there needs to be a lot more done in that area, and I'm happy to go further on this if you want. But I want to come back to the issue, the job-related issue. I think that a lot of people in Germany hasn't been so bad. Let me start like this. Germany hasn't been so bad considering the current situation and the job market, because we have very good programs to ease the problem for companies, right? So people get reduce their hours and get paid a subsidy by the government to still be employed. So it hasn't been that bad in Germany, but obviously people were affected, and a lot of the people that were affected come from the restaurant services industry, because bars and restaurants were closed a lot of hours. People were in jobs that just for a couple hours each week, so they were it's kind of a low number of hour jobs that were affected. And I don't think that these people can be replaced by AI. I mean, we're talking about people working as a waiter or a bartender, working in restaurants, working in hotels, all these sectors in tourism that were affected. I think that I don't see a connection there, right? So I mean, obviously, we're going to have some changes in the job market as well, considering what's possible using technology. But this has always been the case. And when looking back on historical data, we see that there's always been new jobs as well as jobs that we don't need anymore. And this is not necessarily a bad thing. I think what we need to do is we need to look out to take care of everyone. And looking from the perspective of enterprises, it's in their best interest to qualify their own personnel, to make sure that everyone stays on board and that people are able to fulfill the occupations that are there. And so I think there's a necessity for a lot of training within companies. And I'm going to stop here because this was already a lot of topics.
Yeah, there's a lot of topic, but at the end, Professor Harhoff mentioned the European Union, and that we have a challenge in this is a common issue, of course. And what the European Union, in your opinion, member states how the European Union, how Brussels can promote, support the digital transformation in whole Union? Would you say the European digital strategy, which Margaret Vestager presented before Corona crisis, and European Green Deal, this is exactly that what European Union companies will make great again in digitalization?
From my point of view, we need to have a look at what's necessary and what needs to be done.
Exactly.
And I mean, both digitalization or digital transformation and the decarbonization are structural changes that are current, that are a necessity, and companies need to deal with this. So I think it's correct to address this in policy. And yeah, and we can talk about whether the measures are right or not. I think in the face of the pandemic, a lot is to be said that the European Commission still sticks to the Green Deal and still makes pushes this forward. On the other hand, we've heard from Thomas Jarzombek that the Commission is doing a lot of work on the Digital Services Act. There's also an aim to introduce a new competition tool on the European level. And I think, and I'm going with Professor Harhoff on this, I think this is taking it a step too far maybe, because we need to find the correct balance between regulation and setting the framework conditions right for companies, and maybe even protecting European companies from say big tech companies from the United States or China. And on the other hand, but we need innovation, we need entrepreneurship within Europe, and we don't need to stifle that by our own regulations. So I think some of this, I would say, is a bit critical because it's taking it very, very far and from a competition point of view.
And what is the right answer from your point of view?
As for competition, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't think we need, I do think that the amendment to the German competition law makes sense, but I don't think we need a new competition tool, for example. I just think we need better and quicker enforcement of our existing rules. I think part of the aim of the European Commission at the moment is to intervene earlier, to intervene before market power is actually there. I find that very critical because digital markets are very dynamic, and it's oftentimes not sure who's going to end up being the monopolist, or if there is a monopolist in the end. And also, if this monopolist is going to abuse its market power. So I think what we need is a close monitoring of these markets. We need personnel and the competition authorities to do just that. And we need quick enforcement of our rules. But we don't need a rule that says, let's cut it off earlier, because I mean, this is going to affect European companies as well, and we don't want that. We want European businesses to be able to grow also in the digital sphere.
Okay, thank you very much. Professor Harhoff, I see that you want to add something, right?
Yes, gladly. I think we need some new concepts. I think it's not enough to sort of patch up the competition frameworks that we have, because we have some new phenomena. We have now platforms that stretch out and that become monopolies. And there is no monopoly that behaves nicely. Monopolies are monopolies. They strive for profit. That's what they're built for. And if I see that a monopoly goes, for example, with a Fitbit device into collecting now health-related data, and the Commission waved that through, and there's a lot of protest against that, rightly so, I think, okay? Then I'm concerned. Why? Because that monopolist is extending its power into a lot of parallel sectors. And I think we need to find ways to deal with that. And some in our concepts right now do not do that. We need a fundamental discussion on that.
Yeah, but how? What will be the best way? What would you propose?
Oh, the discussion that is raging right now among competition economists goes as far as breaking up big concerns. We have done that in the past before, when oil concerns. This was the starting point of antitrust, 1890s, when market power became so strong. Okay, I'm not saying that I'm succumbing to that opinion. I'm just telling you that the discussion has extended in range considerably, and we need. By the way, let me protest one notion. This is not necessarily about protecting European companies. I want my kids' data protected. I want our livelihood protected. I want my privacy protected. And right now it is not, because some of the rules that Europe has imposed are neglected and ignored on a regular basis by other countries. And we have in other countries players who are not playing by WTO playbook anymore. Neither China nor the United States. So how do you deal with that? By sticking to the playbook? I'd love to stick to the playbook. Free trade is great. We should intervene as little as possible. But I think the whole framework has changed fundamentally, so that marginally doing things. By the way, I also like the changes in GWBC. That's okay. But I think we need more in terms of discussion. And I think we also need a discussion on industrial policy and industrial autonomy in certain strategic areas.
Absolutely, but we need as well the discussion on digitalization of the German Mittelstand. And exactly, Mr. Jarzombek, I want to go to you, back to Berlin. How do you see the exchange between startups in Germany and the medium-sized companies? What they can learn from each other and what not?
Yeah, first let me say, so I'm convinced that the mechanisms of 1890 are the right mechanisms for today. And the discussion about to split up the tech giants is a discussion for years right now, and I don't see any kind of progress on that. And I don't believe this is a realistic tool set. So we're coming up with this new antitrust law here, and it enables the authorities to some new features. For instance, there is a definition of platforms as themselves. That's very important to get a general approach to act. And the second thing is that they can force companies to access data to the giants, for instance, or to make them interoperable and things like this. And so right now we are in the parliamentarian process of enabling some additional features on that. And the way that the big tech giants are lobbying against this law shows that it must be right in some way. So the cooperation between startups and the SMEs, we have a program that's called Digital Now, and we have 26 SME 4.0 centers where we want to enable the SME companies for initial consulting about the opportunities and challenges of digitalization. But from that point on, they have to run for themselves. So that's important to say. It's just a starting point. It's for all these entrepreneurs who are saying, so what shall I do? And so we are fostering very much the processes for buying more stuff from startups, also as a government. And we also try to connect the SME companies to that. And what's key for us, I haven't mentioned, is that we are going to invest a 20 billion public money that leads to a 60 billion venture capital value we are spending in new companies. And this is really important because I don't believe that every company with a long legacy will move to the new targets. As you see, the electric car was not developed by Ford or General Motors, and the rocket to the ISS came not from Boeing, it came from SpaceX. And even the internet services are not being developed by Microsoft, they came from Google. And so you see that these legacy players tend to keep a long time on their old business models, and therefore we need to enable the new ones, the new young wild guys to start through with their business and to disrupt all the old ones.
Yeah, but Mr. Jarzombek, you are in German Bundestag since 2009, and we hearing this sentence that about legalization and this kind of stuff since years. So why this process takes so much time?
What exactly do you mean by it takes time?
Because, you know, the law issue, exactly, because, you know, when we're talking about digitalization, automatization, that many people saying that law regulation are following the digitalization and the business, not that the business following law regulation. How do you see this problem?
If you're in a democracy, it takes time to make new laws. And I think we are even faster than the European Union, but that doesn't help. And I don't think in no society that wants to discuss items, we can speed up in the same way as it's done by startups. But I don't think that's necessary in the end. But because I don't believe that by regulation you can handle with that. The only way to handle with this is to build your own agile players. That's what's our key role. And we are building very concentrated on that. And until Peter Altmaier, our Secretary for Economic Affairs, started, we already invested 4 billion euros in the startup ecosystem. Since for 3 years, as he is now Secretary, we doubled that amount from 4 billion euros to 8 billion euros. We now bring additionally 2 billion euros for solving this Corona problems. And for the next year, we are working on, for 2021, to establish this new future fund, which brings 30 billion euros venture capital to the market. It's the hugest VC program that's ever been done in the European Union. It's 6 times as big as the French program is. And this leads to results, as you can see. And this is the right way. Fostering the own ecosystem with regulation, you will never be able to compete again.
Okay, let's take some questions from the audience. I see there are a few questions. Maybe I would like to ask Hubert Breifus to turn on your camera and let's connect with you. You can ask your question direct to our panelist. Do you hear me, Mr. Breifus? Mr. Breifus?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, hello, how are you doing?
Hello?
Please. Yes, we can hear you and we can see you. Perfect. Where are you?
Oh, I'm in the office, actually.
Which city, which country?
In Warsaw.
In Warsaw, perfect. What do you do?
Professionally?
Yes.
I am trading woodworking machines from Germany.
Okay.
But we are talking about digitalization also in this industry. So I am interested in the development which is coming ahead.
Yeah, and are you happy with the speed of transformation in your field of digitalization?
No, not really. We are doing our best. We are digitalizing machines. We are going in the direction smart factories. We are doing automatization, robotization, production planning, foreseeing, but it's still so much to do, to be honest.
What would you expect from the politicians and from scientists like Professor Harhoff and Dr. Demary when we're talking about digitalization?
From the government, I would need just more support in terms of how to say free taxes for the spending going on the research in this area, and from the academics, I would expect scientists. I would expect more leads. I mean, how to say, we would like to foresee the effects of digitalization, because somehow we cannot lose the people on the way. This is our how to say,
challenge,
because we are digitalization furniture factories in Poland, but working places are left behind.
Yes,
so
exactly.
The factory, the factory, for example, which was having like 5,000 employees, we can shrink it to 500 only with automatization and digitalization.
Okay, let's talk about it. But you have a question to whom?
Actually, to all of you. I mean, are we talking only about the Polish-German solutions, or maybe we should get the forces, all European forces? For the
and you have an example, because I see that in the chat, Airbus project, right? So you expected that, yeah?
This was French-German challenge to Boeing, if I well understand, and now we have to challenge Microsoft and the other big four. So I think we need the forces from all over Europe, from Estonia, through Poland to Portugal, not only Germany and Poland. We are too small.
Absolutely. And your question is, would there be a space for Polish partners? I mean, you know, in a German-French cooperation, a space for Polish partners as well. And let's go to Berlin, to Mr. Jarzombek. He can answer the question quite concrete, right?
Yes, in the end, I believe it's necessary to enable the entrepreneurs, because I don't believe that the business, the concrete business is done by government or something, or by science. It's done by the entrepreneurs. And you see, it's possible to make a transition of your company. You can get support by us. We have this Digital Now program and other tools. And also for innovation, you can get subsidies. That's no problem at all. But in the end, the core decision has to be done by the entrepreneur. And nobody else can take that role. And if you ask, so can we build an Airbus? I'm sorry when I have to say it. We so often hear this Airbus model, and as I am the German aviation coordinator, I know the Airbus from the inside, I can tell you. And it's 50 years ago, and 50 years ago there were different rules in the industry. At that time, it was necessary to get economies of scale, yeah, and the bigger the better. Today, the faster the better. So there are different rules. And if you look Google or Microsoft or Facebook or Apple, these are not companies that have been created by the government. And I don't believe that they can be challenged by the government. By Gaia X, we have an approach to build a framework to keep our cloud service providers. That's pretty important because their size matters. That's true because you have to attract the developers. And if your cloud is not big enough, you will not be able to attract the developers. And in the end, the customers go where the fancy applications are. Okay. And so therefore Gaia X is one of our answers, but the rest is fostering the ecosystem. And it has to be done by entrepreneurs. And I wish more and more to develop software and hardware. And then I believe we will see global champions. Some we have, like Flex Mobility is one of them, and we can create even more.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jarzombek. But because as you, Mr. Breitfuss, please stay with us because I want to go to Professor Harhoff and Dr. Demary to comment your opinion on science, but you mentioned, Mr. Jarzombek, right now that you are a coordinator as well for aerospace. A very brief question. When do you think can you fly from Berlin to Warsaw with an electric plane?
That's something we are investing very much on, and our guys in the technical department believe that can be done by 2030. So there is a new plane factory these days being constructed in Leipzig, and they are building planes with 39 seats. So this is the size which you can electrify first, and we have a lot of development of components here from Rolls-Royce electrical engines, for instance, a former subsidiary of Siemens. And we also invest in hydrogen because the zero-emission airplanes will be mostly hybrid airplanes, so they need hydrogen propulsion to start, and by battery they can do the travel flight. And so this is something we're investing. Sorry?
How long will be the flight?
Yeah, we believe that in a perspective until 2035, it might be realistic to realize 1,000 sea miles. So these are most of the targets you can reach all over Europe. And Airbus is also heading for that. They have 3 concepts and they believe to be in the market 2035. So we will see. There's a little bit of challenge of competition, and that's very good for the innovation on that.
Okay, this is a good news. So then please keep all restriction on Corona to be alive 2035 and to fly from Berlin to Warsaw with the electric airplane. Professor Harhoff,
well, distance can be maybe done by bike. Yeah, so we are so new together.
Probably. Professor Harhoff, very briefly, you answer on Mr. Breitfuss' comment on scientists and digitalization.
I think there are some answers out there already, and I think it was Dr. Demary who said, look, we really need to make sure that there's substantive changes that we will see, because we will see some jobs substituted out of digitization, out of AI, out of automation. We need to make sure that our retraining mechanisms are faster than that technical progress. I have 2 American colleagues, and they always said, look, this is not a race between man and machine, between humans and machine. It's a race between machine and education systems. We have to become much better of retraining people, of bringing them into new, well-paying jobs. Let me point out one other thing. It's not just substitution. There will be new jobs, completely new jobs. And we have to bring those activities into our training programs at universities, in the dual training, and also in anything that the corporations do. And Dr. Demary said the companies are smart enough to see that. Yes, by and large, but not always. They were not smart enough to see how much productivity you could get out of home office. We needed the kick from the virus to see that. So sometimes we need external kicks and challenges to go along with the change.
Okay, you're saying sure. Are you sure right now at the moment that it's going
to
happen?
Sure of what? Sorry, I did not hear.
That it's going to happen, that is changing in the education system are going to happen.
I'm greatly heartened by what I see right now in my country, because there was a wake-up call. We suddenly saw that we have no digitization whatsoever, by and large, okay, that the routers weren't enough, that the teachers didn't even have an email address, a sort of official email address from the school. So we woke up to a fact that we hadn't done enough in that area. And we're trying to catch up now, and I think there are very, very good measures on their way to provide the technology, to get the bandwidth to the school, and to train people. That's very important. I think the training is sometimes more important than having the physical infrastructure.
Okay, Dr. Demary, would you say that the German education is enough fit for digitalization?
I think there's no such thing as the German education, because you need to be sure which level, which type of education you're looking at.
Sure.
Within Germany, we have a dual vocational education system, which is fitted pretty well for digitalization. The way, I'm not sure if everyone knows how it works. This is it usually works like that companies train their students in methods that are company specific, so they gain knowledge from working in the companies, and at the same time they go to vocational schools and gain more general knowledge for the occupation. So basically it's a very company specific type of training for students after secondary school. And this is perfectly fitted for the digital transformation, because companies can adjust the content of what they're training. They can adjust this to the requirements they have on the job, and they're also in close cooperation with the vocational schools to make sure that whatever's taught in class in the schools fits this. So I think in this area we're pretty far ahead, trying to make to teach people the competencies that meet the requirements. However, on the other hand, as Professor Harhoff said, our school system is still, the coronavirus proved pretty well, or showed pretty well the deficiencies we still have here. And I'm not going to list them. I'm not sure if it's any better in Poland, but we saw that a lot of children in schools, in primary schools and secondary schools, were left behind during the phases of lockdown, and even now kids are being quarantined, and there's no such thing as organized distance learning. It depends very much on the school you go to. So I think, to put it positively, there's still a lot of potential, and we now know why it's necessary to proceed here and to put more effort into this area. And there's money there, there's funding. It's just not being used very wisely at the moment. It's the schools need to get in gear and need to try and proceed further and use the technologies. And obviously this is a process. It can be done in just a couple of weeks. We've done a lot of things in the past couple of months, but there's still a long ways to go in this area.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Brightfuss, are you satisfied with the answers?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your questions. And now let's go. We have another education question from Angelika Kuźnar. Mrs. Kuźnar, could you turn on your camera and ask your question? This is as well a question on education and digitalization. Hello, good evening. Are you Angelika Kuźnar? I don't think so. No. Who you are? Do you have a question, Mr. Alex? I see. No. Okay, then let's go to the question of Małgorzata Mazurkiewicz. Are you with us, Ms. Mazurkiewicz? Could you turn on your camera and ask your question to the panelists? Let's try with the question of Małgorzata Mazurkiewicz. If not, I can. Yes. She is here. Hello. Good afternoon. Good evening. Please turn on your mic. No, we cannot still hear you. Maybe now it's getting to work. No, okay. We can. Yes, it's working. Hello. Good afternoon. Good evening. How are you doing?
Afternoon. So my first question.
But could you introduce yourself very briefly? Where are you from?
So very briefly, I can say that I am a PhD student. And in fact, I focus on right now on a comparative analysis between Poland and Germany in terms of banking and fintech sector. So definitely digitalization. The process of the digitalization is the one which I am focusing on. And my first question referred to the statement which was said by Professor Harhoff.
Ms. Mazurkiewicz, sorry, just please choose one question. We don't have enough for many questions, but okay. the most important question to you.
Okay, so the most important will refer to banking and environment and the statement set by Professor Harhoff that the the situation with COVID is the greatest accelerator, also in terms of digitalization. So my question, I would like to know the opinion on this aspect in terms of banking environment in Germany.
Okay, thank you very much. And maybe let's take another question because we need to go to end. From Jolanta Mazur. Are you with us still, Miss Mazur? Jolanta Mazur, yes. Are you with us? Good evening. What is your comment? What is your question to our panelists? We cannot see your face. And yeah, maybe you should. Okay, could you turn on your microphone? Yes, and go ahead. Let's try. No, we cannot hear you. We cannot hear you. Your mic is mute. Your voice is mute. Yes, exactly. Yes, go ahead, please.
You know, you were talking about Germany a lot. I did some kind of a research in Poland, how COVID influenced digitalization of Polish companies. And I must say that then I found McKinsey study on the same thing in Germany. And I must say we are far away from Germany. I will maybe tell you how these comparisons look like.
Yeah, sorry, but Miss, we don't have we don't have so much time right now. Do you have any question to our panelists?
So, so how many German companies changed their business models? Do you have an idea or intend to change their business models into digitalized ones?
Okay.
I have the numbers from McKinsey and I have the numbers from Poland. As a matter of fact, if you have any studies on the subject, I would be interested in them, how it is in digitalization process among companies in Germany. I think that digitalization needs leaders and knowledge among managers. We are lacking both. No knowledge among companies, no leaders for digitalization.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a very strong comment and a very good questions from both participants. Okay, let's go to all of you to answer these two questions and to comment these opinions, and maybe that will be your final statements. And let's start with Dr. Demary from Cologne.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly say something on the business model question. I'm not aware that there are any surveys in Germany asking companies if I understood you correctly, if they intend to change their business model to a more data-driven one due to the corona pandemic, which I think wouldn't be wise anyway, because it's a strategic decision that takes longer than a couple months usually. But what we can say for Germany is that the share of companies that employ a data-driven business model is still rather low. It's about 13% of companies in industry and industry-related services that employ what we call data-driven business models. So again, put positively, there's still a lot of potential.
Okay, very optimistic answer. Let's go from Cologne to Munich. Professor Harhoff, what is your answers? What are your answers?
Yeah, thank you. Let me first talk about the banking issue, because my observation is that COVID has, of course, increased the degree to which electronic banking is used. That has made banking branches, physical banking branches, less profitable. There was already a downhill trend that we saw to have fewer branches, and that has accelerated. And that is now interesting because for many people that is not a problem. But for older folks who are not accustomed to using electronic banking and so forth, the problem has suddenly become greater. And we need training, information, and other means to make electronic banking accessible for these people. And that's different software that has a different interface. And so we need to put some work in there. As to the second question, I think you made a brilliant statement. You said this takes leadership and knowledge. It's not just money. Money is often around. But having the leadership in, for example, family businesses that have been very successful in doing a mechanical product and so forth, to take them to a digital model, to a data-enhanced value-added model is very difficult. We have some surveys in Germany. For example, the Center for European Economic Research in Mannheim does a survey and has asked questions on that. Unfortunately, I'm not aware of any survey that does that in international or in pan-European comparison. It would be very good to have that. So maybe we can jot that down for the European Commission to take care of that.
Thank you very much, Professor Harhoff. And let's go back to Berlin to Mr. Jarzombek. Mr. Jarzombek, are you going to be the champion of Polish-German digitalization transformation?
I don't believe that this is my aim to be the champion on that, but if I can help there, I'm fine with that. And I believe that we are pushing forward digitalization, and there's a lot of work to do, to be honest, in all of the fields, in fostering the new things, in regulating old things, and all these European regulation acts. And so therefore, it will not get boring over the next years. And if we do it together, it would be fine. And let me repeat again, to invite you to Gaia X. I believe this would be very good to have here a stronger German-Polish or Polish-German view on that. And so I invite you to this.
Thank you very much. We're taking this invitation, of course. And Ms. Mazurkiewicz and Ms. Mazur, thank you very much for your questions, and thank you very much for your comments. We end the end, actually. We cannot take any more questions, but the conference is going on tomorrow as well. It starts at 10 a.m., so you have enough time to sleep and to have a breakfast and coffee in the morning, and then go to the conference. For tonight, I want to thank our great panelists, Dr. Vera Demary from Cologne. Thank you very much. Liebe Grüße nach Köln.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Liebe Grüße nach München. Professor Dietmar Harhoff, thank you very much for your participation and for your expertise. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. And liebe Grüße nach Berlin. Thomas Jarzombek, thank you very much for your expertise and for your optimism as well, and challenge for the Polish-German cooperation in the field of digitalization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I want to thank SGH and Konrad Adenauer Foundation for organizing this panel, this discussion. And in the science, in German-Polish cooperation, we have a champion. This is Professor Andreas Bielig. Thank you very much, Professor Bielig, for this panel, for this invitation. And now we're moving back to you.
Okay, thank you, the world champion. I think this is I think it's quite optimistic overestimation, but I have to thank, of course, Mr. Antosiewicz, the presenter of today, and all of the panelists, all of the guests, which contributing to this really fresh, dynamic, and also very interesting, and I would say very fruitful this debate today evening. I was really enjoying this. I hope so. All of the guests also too. Insofar, thanks to our digitalization and on all institutions here at the Warsaw School of Economics in Munich, in Berlin, and in Cologne, and wherever else you are actually sitting, we can of course take part in this process. And I hope, of course, and this is one thing which I'm following Professor Harhoff, that we try to take this move, this dynamics also into the post-COVID times, and I hope this dynamics will improve our position and also our competition. And I wish Mr. Thomas Jarzombek much luck with this. Of course, sitting in the policy, it is a very important task to establish the rules and also to establish the environment. But of course, I think the most interesting things and also the most, I would say, most fruitful initiatives have to be established, of course, from the enterprises. And so far, we hope for a good situation and good interaction between policy, research, this means science, and also the economy. And this is not only holding true for Germany, it is also holding true for Poland. And we have then to find also European solutions. But for today, it should be enough. Thank you. We have 7 minutes finished now, 7 minutes later, but I hope it was for you also fruitful and interesting. Thank you very much for the day. We put the videos after cutting them into internet, and you can follow the debate on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you like. Okay, thank you for your coming, and then I hope I wish you a nice evening, and I hope it was also fruitful from your side. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.